I have told this story exactly twice in my life. Once to our president, the morning after it happened, standing in the gravel lot behind the chapter hall with coffee going cold in my hands. And once to the boy himself, the night we patched him in, when he was 23 years old and the whole chapter was watching and there wasn't a dry eye on the property. I am not a man who cries easily. I am 6'2". I have been the Iron Cavalry Sergeant-at-Arms for going on 18 years, and there are things I have done in that role that I will carry to my grave without a word to anyone. But I am telling this story a third time now because I think it matters. I think it matters that the world knows what a homeless 15-year-old boy did on a nothing highway in eastern Oklahoma, in the dark, with nobody watching. It was the second week of October. I remember because the night air had that particular edge it gets in Oklahoma just before the cold locks in for real, dry and knife-sharp, smelling of diesel and turned soil. We were 12 riders out of the Henrietta chapter on a run down to a memorial ride in McAllister, and we stopped at a Flying K truck stop on Highway 270 just after 1 in the morning to fuel up and let the road captain, a big quiet man we called Decker, stretch his legs. Decker had been pushing through a headache for the last 60 miles. I should have pulled us over sooner. I have carried that particular piece of guilt for 20 years and I expect I always will. Decker made it 40 feet from his bike before his legs went out from under him. His wife, who had ridden 100 miles in the back seat of our support truck and stepped out to meet him at the pumps, got to him first and took his weight going down. He was conscious but barely. She was calling his name, her voice quiet and frightened. I had my phone out in seconds. 2 of our brothers got Decker onto his back and started talking to the dispatcher. That left his wife alone in the far corner of the lot, past the end of the pump islands, where the light from the canopy didn't quite reach. The trucks idled in their lanes. Nobody else seemed to be paying attention. Except they were. I didn't see the 3 men until I started across the lot toward her. They had come around the near side of a parked semi, moving slow, the way men move when they want to look like they aren't moving with purpose. She had her back to them. She was kneeling over her husband, holding his hand, watching his face. She didn't hear them. I was still 30 yards away and I had a sick, dropping feeling in my chest because I knew before I fully knew. Then I saw the boy. He was standing in the shadows at the edge of the lot, between the woman and the 3 men, close enough that he would have had to step back to give them room to pass. He wasn't big. He was thin in a way that told you he hadn't eaten a full meal in a long time, wearing a flannel shirt that was 2 sizes too large and jeans with a torn knee. He might have been 15. He might have been younger. He had a cardboard sheet folded up under one arm. I figured out later that he had been sleeping on it against the back wall of the building, out of the wind, and he was standing with his feet planted shoulder-width apart, looking directly at the nearest man. He didn't say anything. He just stood there. One of the men said something to him, low enough that I couldn't hear it. The boy shook his head once. The men took a step toward him and the boy didn't move. The men reached out and shoved him by the shoulder, hard enough to rock him back a half step. The boy set his feet again and looked straight at the men and did not move. By then I was shouting and running. My brothers heard me and came running. The 3 men looked up, saw what was coming toward them, 8 Iron Cavalry patches at a run in the dark, and made the only intelligent decision they were capable of making. They were gone around the far end of the lot before I reached the boy. I stopped in front of him. I was breathing hard. He was looking up at me with no particular expression on his face, not scared, not relieved, just calm in that particular way that kids who have been scared a long time eventually get, where they are too tired to show the fear anymore. There was a red mark on his left cheekbone where he'd been shoved into or hit by something. He was holding his cardboard sheet in both arms now, pressing it against his chest. I said, "Are you all right?" He said, "Is the lady okay?" I looked back at where Decker's wife was still kneeling in the lot, one of our brothers now beside her, the ambulance still 4 minutes out. I looked back at the boy. I said, "She's going to be fine. Because of you." He looked away. He wasn't comfortable with it. He shifted the cardboard in his arms and said, "I was just standing there." Decker spent 2 nights at the hospital in McAllister, a cardiac event, not fatal, caught in time. His wife rode with him in the ambulance and never fully understood what she hadn't heard coming across the lot behind her. I understand why I never pressed her to. Some stories are better carried by the people who were present. What I did was call our president. He picked up on the second ring. He always did, no matter the hour. I told him what had happened, start to finish, without leaving anything out. I told him about the boy standing in the dark with his cardboard and his planted feet and his torn jeans, taking a shove in the face without flinching. I heard our president breathing on the other end of the line. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Where is he now?" I looked across the lot. The boy was back at the wall of the building, settling his cardboard flat on the concrete, pulling his flannel tighter around himself against the cold. "Same place he was," I said. "Don't let him go anywhere," the president said. "I'll make some calls." I don't know exactly how many calls he made that night, or in what order, or how the word traveled from chapter to chapter the way it did. I know that by the time the sun came up over the red clay hills, our chapter had been joined by riders from Shawnee, from Tulsa, from Muskogee, and from a chapter out of Fort Smith across the Arkansas line. I know that by noon the next day there were 153 Iron Cavalry members gathered at the truck stop and the lot behind it and along both shoulders of Highway 270 as far as the eye could travel in either direction. I know because I counted, or tried to, and lost the count twice, because bikes kept rolling in off the highway. The boy was still there. I had brought him inside when the temperature dropped, set him down at the counter, bought him eggs and coffee and a piece of pie he ate with the focused, careful attention of someone who has learned not to rush a meal he isn't sure of getting again. He didn't ask me many questions. He told me his name without being asked, because he had manners, even then, the kind of manners that come not from money but from someone having taught him once how to be decent, even when the world wasn't decent back. His parents were gone. He had been sleeping rough for 7 months. He was 15 years and 4 months old. When our president arrived in the early afternoon, he pulled his bike into the lot and walked straight across the gravel to where the boy was sitting on a bench outside, watching the riders fill the highway. The president sat down beside him. I was close enough to hear most of it. He said, "I heard what you did last night." The boy said, "I didn't do much." The president said, "You stood between someone and the dark when you had every reason to walk the other way. In my experience, that's just about everything." The boy was quiet. The president said, "Do you have somewhere to be?" The boy said he didn't. The president said, "We have a room at the chapter hall. It's not fancy, but it's warm and the door locks. You'd have a bed and 3 meals and nobody is going to put their hands on you." He paused. "I am not asking you to be anything or become anything. I am asking you to let us keep you safe for a while, and see what happens." The boy looked out at the highway, at the long double row of bikes and the riders standing in the October light. He said, "All those people came because of me." The president said, "All those people came because of what you are." That was 20 years ago. The boy didn't say yes right away. He sat with it for a minute, the way a person sits with an offer they want very badly and are afraid to trust. I have seen that look on men twice his age, the particular stillness of someone calculating how badly it will hurt when the thing is taken back. He looked at the president. He looked at the highway. He looked at his own hands, which were cracked at the knuckles from sleeping outside in the fall cold. Then he said, "Okay." He grew up in our chapter hall the way some kids grow up in a fire station or a church, the smell of engine grease and coffee and leather in his clothes, the routines of men who live by a code even when the code costs them something. He went to school on the stubbornness of the chapter's collective will, which is to say that 3 different members took rotating shifts driving him to the consolidated high school 12 miles up the road and waiting in the parking lot until the bell. He graduated. He went to a technical college 2 towns over and studied automotive mechanics and got certified. He came back to us. He always came back to us. He has ridden with the Iron Cavalry for 16 years now. He became a full patch member on a Tuesday evening in October, 8 years to the month after he was found sleeping behind a truck stop on Highway 270, and our president pinned the patch on his cut himself, hand steady as stone, and there was not a sound in that clubhouse for a long moment except for the settling of the building in the cold. He is our road captain now. It suits him. He has the patience for it, and the steadiness, and the particular quality of attention that a man develops when he has spent a long time in the dark and learned to watch for what moves in it. Last fall, on a late October run through the Arkansas Hill Country, we stopped at a gas station on a county road just after midnight. While the others fueled up, our road captain walked to the back corner of the lot where a teenage girl was sitting on the concrete with her knees drawn up to her chest, trying to be invisible. He crouched down in front of her. He asked if she was all right. He listened to her answer. He came back to me after, and he said, "She needs a ride and a phone call and something to eat," and I said, "Then that's what she gets," and it was that simple. I watched him walk back to her. Tall now, broad across the shoulders, iron cavalry patch on his back, boots scuffing the gravel. The girl looked up at him the way you look up at something that seems too large to be as gentle as it appears. He crouched back down to her level and said something that made her uncoil a little, made her let out a breath she had been holding. I thought about a boy with a piece of cardboard and a flannel shirt, standing in the dark between a stranger and what was coming for her. Not because anyone asked him. Not because he expected anything in return. Just because he was there, and she needed someone to be there, and he had enough left in him to be that person. That is the whole story. That is all of it. The Iron Cavalry came to that truck stop in their hundreds because one boy with nothing stood his ground, and the Brotherhood has never once let him stand alone since. If you ask him now why he did it, why he planted his feet and refused to move that night when every sensible calculation in the world told him to walk away, he will look at you with that steady, patient look he has always had, and he will say the same thing he said to me when he was 15 years old and shivering in a flannel shirt in the October dark. He'll say, "I was just standing there." Maybe that's the truest thing any of us ever do.